video contains a complete live home inspection as recorded with a body cam to enable you to experience a typical inspection on an under 2,000 square foot twin in winter in Pennsylvania. The processes and style of the inspection are how Kennedy Home Inspections performs our inspections, but is subject to change depending on property conditions and other factors. Some portions have been edited for brevity, but not the relevant content, and all identities and parties and localities have been concealed for privacy. It should be noted that this is one inspection of one house in one area of the country and will by no means cover all the elements of inspection for other types of properties. I arrived 10 minutes before the client and realtor, but was given permission to access the property early. Upon their arrival, I greeted them and informed them on the order of the inspection process, starting on the roof, then the exterior, the garage, which in this case at this property was not accessible, and then the basement up through the interior to any attic spaces. Clients, of course, are not permitted to join me on roofs or in attics, but I invite them to be as much a part of the inspection on the interior and exterior as they would like. If they're with me, I'm very tutorial about the components of the home and any findings. In this case, the buyer spent short periods of time discussing my findings after I'd spent some time inspecting segments of the home on my own. Walking a roof is always the best option as long as it's safe. There are many ways to access roofs, and it's imperative that roofs are only walked on if the conditions are right. Sometimes there are creative ways to make it to the second and third floor roofs, but all must be done so with safety in mind first. When this is not possible, we use binoculars, extension pole cameras, edge of ladder views, and drones to get us to where we otherwise can't go. In the case of this inspection, I did what I felt comfortable doing by shimmying this little gable to get to the flat roof. Some inspectors may not elect to do this. Once on the uppermost part of the roof, I'm overviewing the general layout of it and its condition to decide how I want to proceed, ensuring that nothing is missed by the time I'm ready to come down. I take as many pictures as I feel will tell the story, which include items that may be defective, as well as in proper condition. I'm surveying for pillowing in the bitumen surface, any peeling or sealant cracks at the seams, damaged surfaces, puddling of water, flashing in connections to any vent stacks coming up through the roof and the chimney, the height of the piping, clogs at the gutter drains, and softness in the deck sheathing. I'm also looking for tree branches that may be overhanging or coming into contact with the roof surface. Electrical lines, while there aren't any here, should be a minimum of 8 to 10 feet off the surface of flat roofs. Here I'm noting the chimney exterior brick and mortar condition, that it's a shared chimney with the neighbor, which could affect each other's side if neglected, the design of the flue to keep in mind for whatever heat system may be using it, that I'll find out later, the lack of rain caps on top, the makeup of the crown or top of the chimney, and then as much as I can see of the inside of the liner. I made a choice that I felt safer descending the steep gable rather than going back down to my ladder. I slightly underestimated the steepness of the slope, and in hindsight, I probably should have taken the ladder to lessen the risk of damaging the shingles. With the lower roof, I'm noticing the condition, the style, and general age of the shingles, roof flashing, pitch, and the condition of the metal valleys between the roof lines. I can also try to see if it's double layered, though this can often be difficult to see without lifting tabs too far. I'm looking at fascia and rakeboard capping, drip edges, and the siding and its connection to other components, like windows. With the first segment, the roof inspection, now completed from above, it's now time to go talk to the client and the realtor about my findings to this point.
It was a little harder than I thought getting on that roof. All right, so the roof, 2019 they said, right? It's a modified bitumen, so 39-inch sheets of rolled rubber roof, front to back. They So all your water flow goes towards the back. It's a flat roof, but there's a drain in the back. And you're looking for seams that are peeled up or bubbling, which means pillowing, which means that water got underneath it. I mean, it's a newer roof, right? 2019 said. So you're thinking about 3 to 5 years from now, maybe having a seal coat put on it. Okay. You know, and those are inexpensive. They roll it on. It's like a silver aluminized paint. I don't think I'm going to be able to point to anything that has it.
That's just part of regular
maintenance. Yep.
Every 3 to 5 years, you want to get a seal coat. It's a few $100, maybe $500.
When they redid this roof, they put in these little silver. I'm going to show you pictures of these things. But when you see these little silver things, they're basically roof vents. So whatever attic space you do have, whether it's that deep or whatever deep it is, you want good airflow out of it. Right. So I don't know if they left us attic access. So we may never see up there. I'd like to at least look, even though it's not an attic you ever use, to see whether or not there's good insulation in there. The chimney is a shared chimney. Right. So I always put a comment in the report about, if your neighbor kind of lets it fall apart, it could affect yours. But right now they're both in really good shape. Okay. It's just that you have a clay or terracotta chimney liner which doesn't have a rain cap on top, which looks like, where's the neighbor's? No, your neighbors don't have it either. It's like a hat that just sits on top and gets screwed on. So that would be good to keep birds and rain from getting down inside the chimney and so forth. But I took pictures down. It's real clean. You're on gas here, right? Yeah. Yep. So it's very clean clay. Like this roof is different than that roof. So that looks brand new. It could be a year or 2 or 3 years old, but it looks brand new. This looks like maybe, it could be the same age, but I think it's probably 5 years old or 10 years old or something. But it's such a vertical slope that's going to wear better than a flatter roof. So none of it looks bad. Okay. And then all the new flashing and capping and metal pieces that they put up against the wall. The valley here is a metal, or here is a metal valley. All looks good. So I'm going to do the front now and just keep going around. Okay. You're welcome to join me, or I can just fill you in if there's anything important.
Why don't you get started?
You're from Florida, so it's too cold out there. Too cold for me.
I like to start the exterior inspection at the front street edge. Here I get my cover photo of the house for the report, and I'm able to survey the general layout. I'm noting if there's a public sidewalk with any defects like root uplift or breakage. I'm noting the utility shutoffs, locations for the water or gas, any exterior water meter boxes near the street. Is there a fire hydrant within 100 yards of the property? And for sewer vent stacks and cleanouts if they're high enough above the ground, and of what material they're made of. What I see in a sewer line out here will help inform me to know by the end of the inspection about whether or not a sewer camera lateral scope might be warranted, either because of the age of the pipe, potential root damage to it, steep slopes in the yard, etc. I frequently recommend to my clients that if the conditions suggest it, if they don't get the sewer line scoped, at least purchase warranties that will cover them. With masonry steps like these, I'm looking for proper handrails if there's more than 3 risers, anything loose on the treads that may cause a trip hazard, angles or tilts or sinking. Now we have a simple masonry front porch with a roof overhang. I'm interested to note if the patio has sunken or cracked, as it's holding the weight of the roof above it. Since these are iron support columns and they are load-bearing, I'm making sure they are not corroded or rusted, and they are securely connected to the concrete and the roof. I'm also checking the rail by tugging on it to see if it's secure. I'm checking any gaps between the patio and the front wall of the house, even though the roof essentially keeps most moisture away from the foundation at this location. Even though the windows and door are under cover, I'm still looking at them like I would any other outside window to check for flashing, house connections, caulking, capping, etc. But I will double back to the front door once I do my interior inspection. Now I make my way around to the right side of the property, again taking in the broad view first, and then working my way through it systematically. I'm also noting grading away from the property, gutter drains, and any foliage too close to the structure. You can't see it here, but I'm observing the connection of the roof and top vinyl siding at the fascia. I'm looking at the capping and the condition of the upper siding. I'm observing the windows and siding connections and looking to see if anything presents itself for a closer look with a ladder. I'm also visually surveying the brick at the lower levels for bulges, cracks, missing mortar, window connections, and transitions between the finished siding materials. The thumbs up is just my way of letting me know when I write the report for this property that this outlet is GFI protected since it's in a wet location, and that it was covered, tested, and functioned properly. Here I'm noting a crack that's been sealed on a poured concrete foundation. This is my first indicator of stress on the foundation, and I'll continue to collect data as I go along to determine the severity of the crack. I'm checking the hose spigot and noting if it's a frost-free design. Outside hose spigots are not tested in the winter so as not to introduce water into them that may freeze and burst pipes. And I'm also checking the penetrations in the walls from piping that goes through to see if they're properly caulked and sealed. And a quick shot of some potential but minor trip hazards in the walk due to misaligned segments. Here I'm checking the compressor to determine the brand, corrosion, is anything too close to the sides or above it? Is it level? Is it a heat pump or only air conditioned? How old is it? And any other relevant data I can derive from the stickers and plates on it. If the sticker isn't readable, it's probably older than 20 years. In the case of this Goodman brand, I can see right away from the serial number that it was built in 2018 and most likely installed soon afterwards. In weather under 60 degrees, we do not test AC compressors in cool mode so as not to damage the unit. If they're a heat pump, we can test it under the heat mode only. If it were able to be tested, I would be looking for unusual noises or vibrations in the unit. I continue on to look for a proper power shutoff box with protective cover plates and the conduits for the refrigerant and power lines. Now I've come closer to the rear of the property, and I'm taking note of the second foundation crack that I found at this property. I can see step cracks in the brick above this location, and I'm continuing to put together the assessment of how defective this condition is, and if it may elevate for the need for a structural engineer or other specialist. I'm less worried when I see step cracking, which is a crack that follows the contours of the mortar, than if the brick has a vertical split directly through them, but I still need to make sure I don't overestimate or underestimate the problem. If, after the inspection is complete, I'm not professionally sure that this concern is minor, I would always suggest elevating it up to a special contractor or engineer so that I and the buyer are covered. It's not always necessary on most houses to put a ladder up on all sections of the home. I would do so in any situation where I see something that doesn't look right from the ground and needs closer attention. This may seem like it's lacking in effort, but an experienced home inspector knows when it's relevant to add that step, and he or she will do so if they're a good inspector. It's important to eyeball every inch of a home, but not every inch necessarily needs to be touched. You see that the driveway clearly leads down towards the rear of the property, so my next few steps will be to make sure I know where all that rainwater is going and if it's entering the garage or rear door. In this case, there's a drain that I would be sure to tell the clients to keep clear. In some circumstances, you can find a way to run water into that drain to test it, but this is not typically included. I would note puddling or staining that might indicate it's not flowing properly. This old vent may or may not still be in use in the kitchen. I'll check on that later. I'm noting the height and condition of the electrical service line from the utility pole to the house, noting proper rain cap and drip loop to not allow rainwater into the system, and is the line properly secured to the house? Is the meter loose, rusted, or missing caulking or other rain stop features at the service line? And is there a gap at the rear wall where the service line enters the house? In this case, there is, and I would recommend having it sealed. Inspecting all areas of the home is vital for the best overall story of it. Missing a garage is potentially missing a lot. That's especially true in this house because the crack I wanted to see on the foundation is located in there. Also, because I'm familiar with this house style, I'm pretty sure at this point that the main vertical sewer stack is located in there also. These things, plus structure, proper fire barrier walls and ceiling and electrical and other things, make it frustrating that the owner didn't provide access to it, whether intentionally or not. In this scenario, I have to inform the buyer verbally and in my report why these areas were not inspected and advise that they should be before closing on the house. This may mean someone is paying me for a reinspection, or they work out something else between them. A quality inspector is frustrated by this because they want to tell the whole story without missing parts. In a minute, I'll wrap up the exterior portion of the inspection, but I wanted to double back and gather some more information on the rear foundation crack, especially because I can't view it from the interior. I'm noticing that the crack has been sealed and painted over. This makes it difficult to know how wide this crack once was. If larger than a quarter inch on poured concrete, I typically call that out as structurally suspect. If I can't find that out, I elevate it to the next level. Now, since the client didn't come with me, it's time again to have a mini session on my findings to this point.
Okay, so the rundown outside, nothing major, I don't think. Gonna look a little bit closer at one thing, but we'll get to the sidewalks all look fine in the front. You have your gas utility shut off at the street, but you'll have a meter downstairs that's a shut off too. Rails are good, front porch is good, the support columns, which are metal, they are load bearing, they all look good. Just have to keep them from rusting so they don't get damaged. Slope of the porch is good so water flows off. You have a common walk that comes through both properties. I don't know whose responsibility it is. It's been repoured. It's a little offset. It's got a little bit of a trip step on either side. I mean, I don't know if L and I will count any. Are we within the city limits here?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Who knows? But just be careful when you walk on it. So that kind of thing. Coming along the side, you do have a hose spigot that. Generally, you want to shut them off in the winter, unhook hoses, shut them off inside and drain the water out so they don't freeze and break. Things you don't have to think about in Florida. But, there was an outside outlet. GFCI outlets are the ones that have the little reset buttons in them. They're required in that location, so outside, garage.
Is it covered?
It's covered and it's GFI protected. So I have my little tester that checks to see if it trips, if it doesn't trip there, where does it trip, can it be reset, all that kind of thing. So that's all good.
Okay.
Your compressor for your air conditioning's a good one. Now I can't run air conditioning today because it's cold. You can damage it. But it's a 2015 Goodman. There's no rust on it. There's mixed feelings about this. I feel like it's a good idea to cover them in the winter. Some people think that traps in moisture, but I've never had that issue. So just from memory, the brick face looks fine. There's a little bit of what's called a step crack here, that's when the mortar, the crack follows the mortar lines of the brick. It doesn't go right through the brick. If it goes right through brick or stone or whatever, that's signs of a more significant kind of stress. That's not what's happening here, though. You have poured concrete foundation, which is kind of for the, I don't know what, 50s? Where are we?
50s.
Yeah, it was kind of an early style poured concrete, real thick. It's really the best foundation you can have in terms of water impermeability and structure and all that. So that's great. So without even seeing the basement, I'm encouraged that you have a decent, foundation. However, there's a crack going down the side here that it's hard to determine how wide that crack was because they filled it in and painted over it with caulking or other materials and so forth. Generally, our rule on poured concrete is any crack over a quarter inch is considered maybe structurally suspect. Again, I don't know if I'm going to get a look at it from downstairs. I think it's old. I don't want to alarm you on anything. I think it settled a long time ago, and that's been that. But if it's a certain diameter and a certain way that it happened, then I have to at least suggest to you that it could be something bigger. But let's get to the end of the inspection before we circle back on that. I mean, the worst case scenario, we call in a structural engineer to assess it. But I feel at this point, we're not going to get there. So we'll see. Did we get to the garage?
I called the listing agent up and I asked him if, I told him if the key wasn't there. He said, let me call the seller and see if he's around and drop him off. So I didn't go downstairs yet. Maybe he did. He put one downstairs.
There's no opener in there? Okay. Because that's where the crack is in the garage. Yeah. That's where I'd like to see. Yeah. Coming around, I don't think there was too much to talk about. Anyway, the 2015 air conditioner, these systems last about 20 to 25 years or so. So I think, obviously the heat's working, but I'll give a whole look at that whole system when I get downstairs. Flow of water is pretty good. Everything's graded away anyway. You got a killer Rottweiler 2 doors over. And then, of course, your driveway slopes right down into the house, but there's a drain at the base.
Okay.
Just make sure you keep that drain clear. That's key.
Something else I wanted to look at because I didn't know if there was a drain there.
Yeah, well, there better be, or else
all these driveways.
Yep. And for whatever reason, you have asphalt and other driveways seem to be concrete. I don't know who made that choice, but, you know, concrete tends to last a little bit longer, but the driveway's in fine shape. Back door looks good. The trim, the siding, the flashing and capping, everything that connects the roof to the house and the house walls to each other, like vinyl turns to brick over here, they caulked in there. So I'm looking for all these little detail-y things to kind of indicate they've done a good job. And essentially it looks like they have. So we'll hope that carries through. You have 100 amp power at the house, electrical power. The cap on the electrical line, the service line all looks good, the meter looks good. I'm looking for ground wires when I get downstairs, but you know, 100 amp probably is sufficient. You know, my big four are your water heater, your dryer, your air condition, and your oven. Did I say that? Water heater, dryer, oven. If those were all electric, 100 amp probably wouldn't be enough.
Right.
But you've already got that. That's a nice stove. So
Was it dryer gas? I don't remember.
yeah, I haven't looked at it yet. So if there was anything else significant, it'll be in the report, but I would remember. It's just minor stuff to inform you on. I think we're good in the back. This is an easy one. Let's hope it stays that way, right?
That's what I like to hear.
Yeah, let's go down. I'm going to go downstairs. You can do what you want.
Again, I always extend the invitation to the client to use the time however they wish. If they're with me, I'll tell them what I'm doing and what I'm looking at. If they choose to stay behind, I'll fill them in small sessions. Throughout, I'm managing the time to ensure I'm able to get all my appointments in that day, but miss nothing on the inspection where I am. On the steps, I'm looking for any unsafe conditions, loose treads or handrails, missing rails, open risers, damage of any kind. Is it properly lit, and how steep they are? When I enter the basement area, I'm surveying the general nature of it and what's down there to determine what direction I want to go. I'm noticing that much of the front foundation wall is blocked by immovable storage, hindering my view. Even so, I'm finding new cracks that I want to take into consideration. I'm looking over the ceiling, joists, and subfloor, and the flooring. I'm starting to look for abnormalities like cracks, stains, mold, bulges, slopes, or leaning walls. I've noted that the flooring tiles are 9 by 9, which may contain asbestos, but they're in good condition and still glued down. This sidewall crack correlates to the same position on the exterior wall that I noticed earlier. I see now that the crack did extend all the way through the foundation and has been sealed at some point. I'm making a judgment that the crack was obviously large enough that someone felt it needed to be filled, and perhaps it was allowing moisture through. This is one more puzzle piece to add to my determination at the end of the inspection whether or not to elevate this to a structural engineer.
Good. So, yeah, this is kind of the thing. Like a hairline crack like this isn't even something that bothers me because, again, it's poured concrete. This, you know, isn't even the crack I thought that I did see originally, but obviously it's been filled, and I think it's been filled a long time ago.
Yeah, that's old.
So, you know, essentially they fill it so moisture doesn't get in, which it doesn't look like it has. There might be a little bit of staining down there. Okay. Because it's old and it isn't continuing to crack, it means it probably isn't continuing to move. Right. So
it's something you monitor, I think,
right,
over the years.
Keep an eye on it. I don't think the house is sinking anymore, but that's just, this is 9 by 9 tile. It could be asbestos, you don't know, but as long as it's not being broken up and damaged. Obviously, if you, yeah,
we talked about that the
other
other day.
And you can encapsulate. I mean, you can put tile right down over top of it or carpet. That's encapsulating. It's perfectly safe. If you ever want to get rid of it, then you have to do it properly.
Most people don't. You know, most people go right over top of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good subfloor.
Yeah.
So, and it's, well, not in this condition, but asbestos was a good insulator. So there's your gas meter, proper shut off. You know, there's a window there for them to get a reading, but they can't see it. It's inconsequential. But there's your shut off there. And then, of course, your water coming in. This is your main water shut off here. Okay. A little bit older of a valve. Sometimes they don't shut the water off all the way, or they leak it once you activate them. Actually, don't even touch that one. You've got a new ball valve here. Oh. Yeah. This is a better one. Just rotate it like that, and the water's off. Okay. So there's that. Need a door right here for the garage.
I know what I said.
At this point, the client and realtor are joining me as I inspect. The furnace, water heater, laundry, and electrical are all in this following section of the basement, and many are chiefly interested in the condition and age of these systems. Of course, I'm continuing to inspect the structure and other components of the home, but I don't need to inundate the client with every detail that I'm observing unless there's a defect of some kind.
There she is, Goodman. That's a Carrier. Is that wrong, or is that? Let me go double check. Yeah, it's a Goodman air conditioner, but a Carrier heater. I guess they communicate. So, you probably know about these things. This is a filter. This is a junky filter. I would use a better one. It's too thin. But every 2 to 3 months, you swap that out, and then have this serviced once a year. Not in the best location with this thing in the way, but is it? Now, I may know what I'm going to say next, because it comes up a lot. But by his silence, I'm guessing no. So, you have a terracotta clay chimney. This is a high efficiency system, which means the gases that go out of the system are generally cooler, and since it's an interior chimney, there's two issues you have where the gases can get kind of trapped inside the chimney, and there's acidic, the moisture that forms in there can eventually tear up the inside of the clay chimney.
Okay.
It also could be a carbon monoxide risk if it comes back down, and the idea here is when they upgraded this to a high efficiency, they should have lined the chimney to the top with a metal liner. It's probably about a $1,000 job. I'll note it. This comes up a lot. Frankly, after I leave, I don't know how many people do anything about it.
Okay.
So,
If there's no,
you know.
if I don't line the chimney, does it have to be like serviced every once in a while?
Well, it should be serviced once a year anyway.
Might as well be serviced like.
They're very clean gases going up. It's just that
Right.
they're cooler, so they can create moisture up there.
Okay.
And if we see rust or powdery substance forming on the ductwork, see how it's kind of rusty there?
Yeah.
That could be a function of moisture coming back down or being trapped and that kind of thing. So I don't know. Are we in an as-is situation here, or kind of this? All right. So the idea is this should have been done right the first time. So you would ask for them to do it, or you negotiate the price for you to do it, or my report's full of things that you may care about, may not care about, like the rail going upstairs, for instance. That doesn't meet code, but you care. It's kind of you're going to talk about these things.
I may decide when it's relevant to have a quick conversation with my client during the inspection about the report they're going to get, to put their mind at ease that everything we're noting will be included for them in it, and that they don't have to struggle to remember all of it. Here I continue to inspect and explain the overall condition and function of the heat system. We won't test the AC because the weather is too cold. I'm checking the burners, the condensate system, the blower fan, looking for corrosion, the age of the components, checking for air leaks, and looking over the slope and condition of the venting and the general configuration of the return and supply ductwork.
There is a vent here if you want heat downstairs. Thing is, if you open that, it's real close to the air handler. It's going to rob some of the house of heat, but it seems like this system's working so effectively anyway, it may not matter. But if you did feel like
If you're not down here all the time, why you heat this area? Just
Correct.
Put it upstairs.
all right, sorry, I'm going to head that way. So Bradford White 40-gallon water heater. Looks like 2020. I'll go with that for now, but I always check the serial number when I do the report. And it's venting out, properly bonded, hot water, cold water. So these last 10 to 14 years. So you're in good shape for a while with this guy. And the idea is to swap it out before it leaks. So
Before you come down to the puddle of water.
exactly. Now I'm being Mr. Picky inspector guy, but it should have what's called a drip leg on the gas line. That it looks like that. See the extra extension piece?
Oh, yep.
That's to catch debris and condensate so it doesn't go inside the unit. But Frankly, I've never known of that being a problem, but we're told to tell you about it, so. Got a concrete sink.
At this point of the inspection, I'm explaining that the required pressure relief stem coming from the water heater is conveniently lined up with the laundry room sink, and I'm explaining that if the water heater needed to release the pressure, it would go there. Then I go into a discussion with the client about how much of the sewer line cannot be seen because I believe the only visible portion of it is in the inaccessible garage, and the rest of it is most likely under concrete. I explain that it appears old and that she has options to further review it. One suggestion is to have a sewer lateral camera scope done. If she can't or doesn't want to do that, I discuss with her the idea of picking up an insurance rider or a warranty from a local water company that would cover the high expenses of digging up her foundation or the yard if there's an eventual problem. Now I'm looking over the washer and dryer. I'm checking for proper GFCI outlets, hot and cold water shutoffs, proper heating of the dryer. I may run the washer if there's no clothes already in it. These appliances are as is for the client, but it's a good idea to let them know what their current condition and general age is. I'm looking for leaks, proper hoses, and smooth tube metal ducting for the venting, which should terminate outside of the house. For this house, I'm glad I checked because the dryer was clearly on its way out. At this time, I moved over to the electrical panel. Due to the nature of the body camera, there was nothing to see on the video, so I've edited it out. Here, I reviewed the panel with the client. I noted that the panel was well labeled and discussed the 100 amp power service. I removed the panel cover and reviewed the wiring connections, the gauges of the wire in relation to the circuit breaker sizes, looked for overheating, singed wires, any aluminum wire for general house circuits, double taps, or more than one wire per circuit breaker, moisture or corrosion within the panel, access for mice, was the box separated from the masonry wall with a wood spacer, and was there proper grounding. I spend a few moments physically reviewing and discussing the exterior cracks at the foundation with the client and the realtor. Simply telling the client about something and including it in the report is important, but if they bothered to come to the inspection, it's a good idea for them to physically see it as well, especially if it's a more significant finding. As I re-enter the basement on my way to start the first floor inspection, I'm ensuring I've seen all of it. I'm returning to look at the plumbing and the electrical and the ceiling and elsewhere, the joists and subfloor above me, and further indicators of moisture or structural concerns. Beginning my interior living space inspection starts at the front door. Here I check the locks, the door frame for easy operation, proper weather seals, and I check the light on the front porch. Despite standards of practice, which only requires I open an assortment of windows, I try to check them all if I can. I'm looking for water entry or stains, proper opening and closing, any blown seals and thermal windows, functional locks, and if the springs or ropes are working to keep them from falling back down. I check as many outlets as I can get my tester into as well, looking for polarity issues, general function, and grounding concerns. I test the ceiling fans and lights and indicate if there's an unbalance that needs attention in them. I'm also checking light switches and what they operate. Throughout the entire interior, I am paying attention to any sloping or sagging floors, leaning or cracked walls, or any angled door frames, which may suggest structural concerns somewhere. After briefly sharing with the client what I've just looked at in the family room, and explaining what types of windows she has and how they work, it's time to start the dining room and kitchen inspection. Starting at the refrigerator, I typically would not move it out on a home inspection, but I wanted to be able to inform the client whether her new fridge has a connected water line, and I took a small chance by pulling it out from the cabinetry. If I were to damage something by doing this, I would be responsible to cover that.
Okay, so you have a fridge that can have a water line, you just don't have a water line, which is why the sign is there. Yeah. Now, it's not that difficult to do, because there's access to water back here. Depending on where that wall comes, it could be a little bit more tricky. So the old rule was 6 feet from a sink. The new rule is all kitchen countertop outlets should be GFCI. That one's missing GF protection.
As I continue through the kitchen, I'm checking all outlets, general cabinet and counter conditions, including if they're mounted securely and if the doors and drawer functions properly. And I'm looking at the flooring as well. At the sink, I'm noting what it's made of and how it's mounted. If it's undermounted, does it have additional support bracketing of any kind to manage the weight of use over time? Checking the faucet and sprayer for function, leaks, or looseness. I'm observing the downpipe and trap for proper angles of flow and any leaks. Does the washer drain hose have a high loop to prevent backflow? Does the garbage disposal function, and are the electrical connections safe? And are there any mice droppings, bugs, or damage? Next, I'll run the dishwasher through a cycle if it doesn't have a clean set of dishes from the owner in it, and if it appears it will run without an obvious problem. I'm checking for proper gasket seals, secure mounting to the cabinet, if it's level, and if there's any damage on the inside or out. I'll also want to inform the client if the hinges of the door are loose, causing it to fall open. I want to run the shortest cycle possible that runs all of the functions, and in particular, the pump, which can often be the largest leak source. When testing ovens, I'm looking for proper response from all the burners, and the elements or flames of both the broil and bake settings. I'm also checking that the oven does not rock forward when the door opens, meaning there's no anti-tip bracket installed. I'm observing clearances above and on the sides of the stovetop. I'm noting the type of ventilation as well. Is it built in with a microwave or just a hood? Does it vent outside or inside? Are there filters and what are their conditions? I'm testing the microwave either with a cup of water or a testing tool to determine if the magnetron is actually working or if the microwave is just spinning. A quick overall check of kick plates, flooring, and cabinets, and then I'm on to the first floor powder room. I'm aware that this bathroom was added during a recent renovation, so I wanted to spend some time double checking for leaks. I run water at the faucet, looking for hot on the left and cold on the right. I flush the toilet and check it's secure to the floor with no leaks and how well does it drain. Back at the sink, I'm looking for leaks in the downpipe, and I let water run for a bit to ensure a good test and to make sure the drain doesn't back up. Any outlets in the bathrooms are checked for function and proper GFCI protection and how the bath fan functions. If it's a bathroom with a shower, there needs to be ventilation to the exterior, so any fan that's installed must be verified to not emit moist air into any interior space of the home, including attics or garages. I begin my inspection of the second floor at the base of the steps, and I note the handrail, while decorative, could be a choke hazard for younger children since the openings in the rails are wider than 4 inches. Once I've surveyed the steps for tread length, damage, and general rise to run ratio, I arrive at the second floor, where I make a choice which direction I want to go to systematically record what I'm looking at. At all times, I'm checking for structural anomalies in the walls, door frames, and floors. With vacant properties such as this one, there's greater access to the structure and fixtures, and I'm able to more easily test more outlets and windows, closets, and other areas than I often can in an occupied property. I noted here that even though this was a 3-prong outlet, it wasn't properly grounded. I'll call that out in the report and suggest it gets repaired. And I'll probably offer a suggestion that the house was built in the 50s, so it's possible there's no grounding wire available here. While not inherently dangerous, I might suggest that if the client doesn't have the outlet repaired, it should be reduced back down to a 2-prong outlet, so that when used, the occupants are aware that it's not grounded, or that she would use a surge protection strip while using this outlet to power electronic devices and other appliances that might get damaged with a power surge. I spend the next few minutes repeating the same functions in all the bedrooms, where I note other outlets that weren't grounded and some unbalanced wobbling in the ceiling fans. I also check each window for the same issues mentioned earlier: seals, locks, springs, etc., and the general functions of all the doors. Unfortunately for the purposes of this video, there was no access to an attic to include, but perhaps in future videos I can include that. Finally, the second floor bathroom is my last room for inspection. I take note of the condition of the flooring, the window for ventilation. I run the sink and toilet and check for leaks. I check the grout and caulk lines of the shower. I test the stoppers and the water diverter at the tub faucet. I check for proper temperature operation at the control assembly and for proper drainage. I always check for leaks in the ceiling beneath these fixtures when I can. Finally, any outlets in the bathroom should have GFCI protection and function properly. The final stage is to recap not only the findings that I've experienced since I last met up with the client, but the entire property as well. This is the time to discuss the severity of the defects and discuss what the inspection report will contain. This is an essential time to offer the client the chance to ask hands-on questions while still at the property about anything they don't understand or didn't see. I'll provide the client's report most likely the same day, but no longer than 24 hours later. After that, I'm always available to answer as many questions as it may take from the realtor or the client to ensure that all the information is provided so that they're able to make a reply to the seller of this property with any requests. So, some viewers, especially if you're home inspectors, may notice a number of items that I did not cover in this video. While the majority of the inspection done today was included in this video, the nature of the body cam and its limited point of view made much of the inspection undesirable to watch. Also, remember this inspection could not include the garage and attic and was a smaller occupied twin in northeastern United States. So, inspectable items on other houses weren't present here. Also, in the interest of time, I decided to not include segments like all the heater functions and supply air at the vents, testing smoke alarms and carbon monoxide detectors, temperature checks, flare gun insulation spotting, and the more detailed elements of a true full home inspection. Rest assured, nothing was missed, and this client got a complete report of everything inspected at this property. Glad you could join me on this small house inspection. I hope it was informative. We'll see you next time.